Very good morning on day 2 of Royal Ascot 2020. We are still here, we are still rocking and rolling. What a shout. Myself, Dave Orton, joined by 3 wise men on the panel. All the big shouts on all the big races. We'll be giving you exactly what's happening this morning. Your best feature show. Delighted to say Bruce Millington back in the panel. Welcome back to What a Shout.
2 wise men and me after yesterday. There was nothing wise about that.
Was it that bad?
It wasn't great. And to sum it up, I backed Batash to win by more than 2 1/4 lengths, and he won by exactly 2 1/4.
I mean, come on, really? I mean, that's unbelievable. It did look a little bit more, didn't it? We were just talking about this. Unbelievable. Also back from Ireland in Dublin, Dave Jennings is with us. You had a good day yesterday, Dave.
Yeah, it was. It was reasonably good. Yeah, a lot of horses ran quite well, but like Roseman almost got third. Equilateral ran well each way, obviously against Batash, and yeah, a very enjoyable day. Broke just about the right side of even.
A nod to your summation of Circus Maximus, Dave. What an incredible drift that was. You said he was the fighter in the ring, and I mean that was some performance, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was just him in a nutshell. If ever a horse needed to be summed up in a race, that was him, and I think he might start getting the credit he deserves now, because every time he wins, he looks beaten, and we love horses like that. I spoke about Giant's Causeway in my piece. Like, he obviously has a long way to go before he scales those heights, but what he's done so far has been remarkable.
He's certainly getting there. And Pat Cooney from our sponsors, Bet365. Good morning, Pat. You must have feared the worst when Circus Maximus, who went incredibly out to 9-2, 4-1 SP, got over the line in the Queen Anne.
Well, the die was cast a long way out there, Dave. We were going to lose whatever happened with the front 2 there. But I think that it was an OK results for us. I think the likes of Mogul getting beat, he was very pivotal to how the day went. If he had won, he was sandwiched between the good things, Frankly Darling and Batash. So on balance, it was OK for us. That being said, of course, pile driver Tom Segal found it. So it wasn't easy. But it looks tougher today, doesn't it?
Daunting card, said Paul Keeley in the Racing Post. Let's get right into that. So don't forget, you have the incredible offer, 3 months for £10 in the members section, all the race replays, the spotlights, the RPRs, all the analysis. It's all there of what's happening. The trainer quotes, you can get them all. Promo racing is back. Right then, daunting card as mentioned, the 1:15, where the Buckingham Palace opened the show yesterday, all on the stand side. It's just the Silver Hunt Cup. A consolation, Bruce, I guess, isn't it? Or just to get more horses in. But 2 Hunt Cups on a card. Tricky.
1 was one too many for me. 2, my goodness. But it's an interesting start, and I mean the 2 questions that people are going to want answered are: what's the track condition like? There was conflicting reports yesterday. Some people said on the soft side, others said look at the times, it was just good ground, and then also the draw. I don't think there's necessarily a draw bias, but I think there becomes one when the jockeys decide there is, if that makes sense. And I just would favour horses drawn medium or high today. I suspect a low number is not going to be ideal. It's not going to be wrecking. You wouldn't completely leave them alone, but I'm going to be leaning towards horses drawn slightly higher. And my first selection, Ouzo, is drawn 24 in this, so absolutely bang where you want to be. Yeah, I just think this horse is a real decent animal. His comeback run was excellent to show how well in he is. I mean, the ultimate sort of yardstick in this is Zhui Feng. You know, beat that one last time and is no worse weighted against that one. So I just think, you know, he's not sensational value. Slight negative for me is that Richard Hannon, in the quotes in the Racing Post today, was keener to talk seemingly about Brian Epstein, his other horse, but he still gave Ouzo a good spray up, and I'll side with him. I'm playing a very safe, forward defensive to the first race.
A defensive strategy for Bruce after the first day losses. DJ, take it away.
Yeah, well, I have something interesting to add to Bruce's point there. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing for you, Bruce, but I did Richard Hannon's stable tour in the Racing Post, and it's only 2 pages this year because we're trying to squeeze them in. And I had all the horses rated over 100 picked out. And then at the end, I said, is there anything else that I haven't included there that you want included? And he said, oh, God, you've got to include Brian Epstein. He said, there's a really big handicap in this horse. So I was obviously intrigued when he ran at Haydock, and he was extremely lucky to bump into an extremely well handicapped horse in Cap Francais. The 2 of them ran up a mark of 95, but Cap Francais, who was second favourite to beat Anthony Van Dyke in last year's Lingfield Derby trial, was running off the same mark as him, down from a mark of 103 to 95. He looked like beating him. He traded quite short and running, but he was just run out of it in the end. They pulled miles clear of the third that day, and I said that's why Richard Hannon wanted me to include him in his tour. There definitely is a big handicap in this horse. He's still rated 95. He hasn't gone up for that performance. And I know Ouzo was probably the more kind of flashier one, given his performance last time. But I think Brian Epstein is the best of the two, and I think he's decent each way value at around 10-1.
2 ticks for Hannon, who took out the Buckingham Palace Stakes yesterday. Pat Cooney, how's the market looking on this, and what's your selection?
Well, when I was a young lad growing up, Dave, a long time ago, I thought races at Ascot and so on with 24 runners would be 10 the field. But the market's just focused on 2 horses. Ouzo, who's round about 4, and Maydani of Mark Johnson at 9-2. And then it's 9 bars. So I think they're miserable prices, the front 2. Both have strong chances, of course. But Ouzo, he's drawn 24. Maydani's drawn 5. I don't know. I suppose one's going to be well beaten and the other's probably going to win, I should think. But they're too short for me. I mean, to look at those prices, I did select Maydani, but I thought 9-2 seems woefully short to me. And I'd probably be looking further down the prices now. There must be good each way value because the market is all about these 2 at the moment.
Yeah, lots of people will be backing more than one horse in the race. I've gone for Alternative Fact for Ed Dunlop. Big eye catcher. That was in that Babbo's Boy race that I was in the studio with you with Rafe Beckett's first winner of $1 million. And he really caught the eye if you watch back the video. He's on a good mark. Rain would be a plus. They're saying it's good to soft at the minute. We have to sort of, as Bruce alluded to, I think we have to assume it's kind of on the good side. Frankie's on, high draw, he'll do for me.
Yeah, he was very much on my shortlist as well, I'll probably have a Rod Laver on him.
The Rod Laver, have a saver. Let's look at the 150 then, the Hampton Court, 3-year-olds listed. We've seen some really good performances in this. I guess First Receiver, the race kind of revolves around him, the Queen and Frankie.
Well, it might do from an intrigue point of view. It doesn't from a betting point of view. This is the one race where I feel I'm approaching it with a degree of confidence. I don't like First Receiver, and Russian Emperor doesn't do it for me so far. I'm going to focus on the 2 horses that ran in the Guineas. Juan Elcano, who set off really quickly, and at a massive price you kind of thought, well, he's going to fall down a hole and leave it to the others. I mean, he was 5th in the end, and that was a really good performance. He stayed on much, much better than you'd have thought, given how fast he went early on. I think he's probably the likeliest winner, but at the prices, I've taken a chance with Kenzai Warrior, who completely blew the start, but actually ran on really, really well. And I just think with 8 runners, fingers crossed there are 8 runners, he's a double-figure price, and I think he's a decent each-way chance. 2
stabs for Bruce there, an interesting Kenzai Warrior on the trip. Let's hope he breaks better this time. DJ?
Yeah, I love the way Bruce is approaching this race, and I'd be thinking along similar lines. The betting is bonkers here. It really is. Like, First Receiver won let's call it a pretty moderate Kempton maiden quite easily. He's only rated 98, his favourite. Russian Emperor, who seems to be the more racing he gets, the greener he gets. Like, he was still very green and immature, I thought, at Leopardstown, in what was a pretty poor Derrenstown Derby trial. And then you've got Juan Elcano, who's 7-2 at Bet365, who's the highest rated runner in the race, who was 5th in the Guineas, who was a close-up 3rd to Tret in what I thought was a decent Champagne Stakes. I think Tret has got a really big chance in the St James's Palace Stake later on this week. He won in his debut at Haydock on heavy ground, so if there is a little bit of cutting it today, that won't bother him. And I think he's crying out for the step up and trip. I think this is a simple case of him being the best horse in the race with the highest rating, but he's not from the sexiest stable, and that's why he's the price he is. I think he should be favourite, Juan Elcano.
Very interesting, yeah. Well, I think on form, certainly. Pat Cooney, the betting is bonkers. What do you make of it?
It is. I think if an alien landed in the middle of Ascot Racecourse and said, can you just explain why First Receiver's favourite and the likes of Kenzai Warrior 12, Berlin Tango 5, I think you'd be off the bridle to do it, Dave. But it's all about image with First Receiver. He's got that Sir Michael stout profile. He's only rated 98. He could have kept into handicaps. He's owned by the Queen. He's not going to let her down. So he didn't achieve that much, did he, when he won at Kempton? It was wide margin. He looks a false favourite, but you just have to respect Sir Michael Stout wanting to run him in a Group 3 like this. You look at, I think, a horse like Berlin Tango. He beat Pile Driver, who won yesterday. You're right, the market is hard to explain, really, but you go by what the public want to back, and Frankie riding for the Queen is a big attraction.
Yes, it's an attraction for me. I have to say, I am a fan of First Receiver. I did the Kempton race for the Racing Post Analysis team, and I was blown away by him. There was a keen on-runner in the race, and it fell apart, but he was extremely impressive, and I backed him a couple of times as a 2-year-old. I know they think the world of him. I think this will be hats off for the Queen with Frankie. Right then, race 3. Oh, and this looks like the tricky one. I mean, littered with progressive potential group horses, 3-year-olds. It's the Mile 4, King George V handicap. Where are we going with this one? David Jennings, I'll give you first offer.
I'm ashamed of myself here, Dave. It's a wide open handicap, but I really fancy the favourite. This Kips, right, when he ran a Haydock, on my second favourite racing website. Hugh Taylor put him up that day. And I'm always intrigued to just follow Hugh's tips. Wouldn't necessarily back him, just to follow him, see it to go. And this tips, how he didn't win at Haydock was beyond me. He traded 1.11 in running. He travelled like the best horse in the race. He battled like the best horse in the race. And somehow he was just nosed out of it on the line by Walk On By. They were nicely clear the third that day. The way he travelled in that race suggested to me he's not even remotely an 80s horse. He's definitely a 90s horse, potentially a stakes horse in the making. He's running off the same mark of 83 here. The draw should be okay. He's a little bit out in stall 12. But there must be some amount of improvement to come from this kit. It's like he'd only won an all-weather race prior to that. And he's short, he's favoured in a big field handicap at Ascot, and it's ridiculous to be tipping a favourite like this, but I think he'll win.
Should improve the step up in trip. It wasn't near miss, wasn't it? And Hughie Morrison's got some business with this race. He always aims his best 3-year-old at this. Now, a double-figure draw, Bruce, has actually been a real bonus in this race. They get. Do you remember first 11 a couple of years ago under Frankie? And Abdullah Horse got absolutely no run whatsoever. That's when I tagged onto it. I think if you're drawn wide and you're swinging off that bend, that's probably where you want to be. I've gone for Bodyline for Sir Mark Prescott. Land of Oz ran okay, didn't he, in the 2 mile 4, probably a bit keen. If you watch back his return run, he was absolutely eating up the line. I think it's all mile 4. He'll do for me Bodyline. Have you got an absolute nap in this race?
You can't. I mean, you've got the double whammy here of 18 runners and the unexposure factor. We haven't got to the bottom of probably any of these horses yet. They've all got varying degrees of unexposure, if you like. I mean, obviously, Kipps, as DJ says, that was so impressive last time, but the price is just horrific. I'm going to go for Bright Melody on the basis that Kempton run, which obviously produced Pile Driver, is going to get hopefully a bit of a glow up from Berlin Tango in the 150. And I just think Bright Melody for Charlie Appleby and Will Buick carries plenty of weight, but there's a reason for that. I think that Kempton form is decent. Yeah. It's not just Pile Driver. It's been getting positive endorsements elsewhere. So I'm going to go with Bright Melody. Very respectful of the favourite, but he's just too short for me.
Yeah, he was off the bridle turning in, wasn't he? The market was lukewarm on him. He ate the line hard. Pat, are there going to be any gambles in this race? Surely.
Well, the sexy horse is obviously Kipps. I'm with DJ. He looks far better than an 83 to me, but I'm not one for stats by and large, but this race is quite different. You need to have a Jabawi horse that's drawn double figures, and there is only one, and that's Bright Melody. 2 races, both with credit in each of them. He's 98. You could see him being 100 pluser by the end of the season. So Jabawi, Ascot, 1.5 miles, it all points to Bright Melody. But again, there's no real juice at the top of the markets in these handicaps. I think we've all ended up on the same horses. So again, it might be one of those you might be better off looking at a double figure one and backing a couple each way there. But I do like Bright Melody as a horse going forward. So I'll team up with Bruce on that one.
Some teammates in a really tricky handicap. Right, then 3 o'clock at Ascot. Maybe getting a little bit more simple stuff here, I think, because we've got the Group 1 Prince of Wales' stakes, and really it's all about Japan, isn't it? What view do you take on him? Back in February, he sold a half stake to a business owner in Japan. It's all about the Arc, Bruce. How do you view it? Are you with or against? I mean, he's around about 11 to 8-ish. That's going to be a carrot, isn't it?
Everything has its price, and probably 11 to 8 is Japan's price. In fact, probably 5 to 4 is. I mean, it's a clear form horse. The previous race we were talking about how unexposed they are, and most of these we know how good they are. There's a few people think that Hedman will step up a bit. I'm not mad on Hedman. I think he's got a lot of stepping up to do, and I might even take him on in a couple of match bets. We don't know yet whether Adib will get sufficient rain to run. We hope he does. But all things considered, this is one race where I think you can keep it simple and just go with Japan. The fact that you say it is all about the Arc is a slight neg, because if it is all about the Arc, do they really want to have him absolutely cherry ripe in June? Aidan, in his quotes today, he wasn't, he's never bullish as such, but there was a hint that perhaps there is a little bit more to come from him. But I think I don't think Aidan's going to send him for a Group 1 at Royal Ascot, not tuned up to the extent that he can do himself justice. So on that basis, and the fact that he's gone out to 11 to 8, I'm going to be with Japan.
Yeah, I'm with Japan as well. I've got to say, I think if the first couple of races are a bit tricky and a couple of rags go in, this is the one that Pilar's going to punt on. So you might want to get in early. Pat Cooney, I'm going to come to you before DJ. Just exactly what sort of price are we, expecting that he could go out to Japan?
Well, if 11:08 floats your boat, I've got news for you. He's now 6-4, and as I said before, prices dictate opinions, didn't I? I think in the start of the week we were thinking this fella would be round about evens, but I think the threat of rain, maybe, we don't know how it's going to go. That's brought Adib into the equation. And Lord North has been popular as well. Barney Roy's also been popular. So he's now 6-4 Japan. You could see that being a big old price, and I wouldn't imagine he'd be sliding out in the market for too much longer, because at some point he becomes a bet, doesn't he? So I'm a Japan fan, and I thought he's got a good-looking CV anyway, never mind what he's going to do this year. So I'm slightly surprised he's easy in the market, but I'll put it this way, I don't think the big players have moved yet on the race.
Mogul was turned over, of course, at what was a carrot-dangling price, wasn't it, yesterday, for Team Ballydoyle. DJ, what's the vibe coming from Tipperary for Japan then? Is this a steam job or...?
Good. The vibes are good. Yeah, the vibes are good. I did Aidan's stable tour, and he's been pretty happy all along. Now, he's obviously said he would have liked to have ran him before now, but given the COVID-19 situation, he hasn't been able to. A couple of things here. The pace. This is the thing that worries me. I couldn't find a front runner in the race. And for Japan, who ideally is best over 12 furlongs, the pace could be crucial here, because I don't think he's a speedy type. I don't think he has that instant acceleration. I think he's a wind-up horse. So I just wonder if the Ballydoyle boys, the lads as they call them, are chatting this morning and they're going through the race and they're saying, Dave is a hold-up horse, Lord North is a hold-up horse. Not sure Barney Roy is going to want to make it. Headman definitely won't make it. Bangkok, I'm not too sure. Frankie could try and steal this on Medaya. He could. This has a Frankie masterclass from the front, written all over. If you remember last year's Nassau Stakes at Goodwood, he tried to take on Hermosa up front because he didn't want Hermosa to have a solo. They went far too quick. And at the time, because she was 3-1, you were saying to yourself, she was a bit disappointing. She was beaten a length and a quarter by Deirdre, who turned out to be this globe-trotting superstar. So that run wasn't too bad. And I just wonder this morning, there's going to be a lot of thinking going on in those two camps, the Gosden and the O'Brien camp. I would say Aidan will probably want Ryan to sit second, but he'll want something to go with decent pace. And he'll say, Ryan, if nothing goes on, you go on. We're on a stair here. But I think Frankie might be the one just to take the bull by the horns and kick on. And for that reason, I think Medaya is probably the value each way against Japan, or maybe in the betting without market because you've only got the first two. I think Japan is the best horse. I think he'll probably win. I think he's a decent price now at 6-4. But it's just that threat of it turning into a sprint that bothers me, because I think he's a 12 furlong horse. So Japan, but Medaya, I think he could be a bet in running proposition. I think you could back him and then get out of it pretty early, because I think Frankie might try and steal it from the front.
It is interesting they kept her in training, isn't it? Yeah, and the tactics is a fascinating point.
That is fascinating. DJ, just one thing I want to kind of challenge you there on, or query it there. You're saying that Frankie could actually try and steal this from the front. By doing that, wouldn't he then be providing the pace that that Ryan would want on Japan? Do you get me?
Yeah, I do. I get you. But I just wonder, I think because it's the first start of the season, I just wonder, would Ryan and Aidan be happy for Japan to take a lead, no matter what that lead is? And Frankie is pretty good from the front. I wonder if he just got there and stalled it and said to himself, you know what, nothing's going to want to go by me here in the early stages, so I'll try and stall this. Maybe Ryan will then kick on because he knows he needs to force the pace. But I think those first two furlongs are going to be fascinating, because it's hard to see any of the rest of them wanting to go on. They're all hold-up horses who prefer cover, so... Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm really looking forward to that first furlong.
I'd throw a Dave into the mix, Dave. If you watch back his Australian runs, they tried to negate the slow tactical paces there, and he actually attacked off the bends there. So maybe he has changed his outlook a little bit, of Dave. He could keep Frankie warm, and Lord North would like that, wouldn't he? If you remember that Brigadier Gerard probably did idle in front. It looked like he was going to beat El Kham senseless, and then was tying up on the line. What a fascinating race. 6-4 Japan. Time for the My Racing boys then and their double. Do check out myracing.com for all the expert tips and analysis. Had a good day yesterday. Nap Circus Maximus, and it's another Ballydoyle double they go for. That's right, Japan, the big hitter, and the Prince of Wales, and they go for Russian Emperor as well in the Hampton Court. Good luck to them. We're up to race 5 then, and this is the real Hunt Cup. I don't know, I've always loved the Hunt Cup. You know, I've often done exactas of the high numbers or the low numbers. Sometimes it's come off. Sometimes I look for a really, really progressive horse. This year, Bruce, I could pick out about 8 progressive horses at the top of the market. I just couldn't choose between them. I ended up going for Pogo, who ran just ahead of Kazar on his return. Watch back that video. I've got a feeling on the near side, he's way overpriced at 28 to 1. He's actually got quite an interesting profile. Charlie Hill's obviously had the 1-2 yesterday in the King's Stand. He'll do for me under Callum Shepherd at a massive price. Yourself?
Well, DJ said earlier he was not embarrassed, but slightly ashamed to be tipping such a short price favourite in the George V. I feel the same about putting up Lord Tennyson, because it just, you get a value loser. You fancy a horse or a football team, whatever, you think, I don't think this horse is going to win, but it's going to outrun its odds, and they do, and they just get beaten and think, well, that was a value loser.
Yeah.
This is the opposite. This feels like it could be a poor value winner. It just screams, how can I say it? Between 2 furlongs out and 1 furlong out, I cannot believe those Blue Silks are not just going to chug into contention, and if you've backed something else, you're going to be like, I should have gone with the favourite. So I'm going to go with the favourite. The price, it doesn't stink. You couldn't put it up if you thought the price stunk, but certainly the connections factor is well in there. But all things considered, I'm going to, again, very, very defensively go for Lord Tennyson. So
the pinner's gone. That was good at Newmarket. Totally unexposed. He'll do for me in an impossible-looking race.
Pretty much.
DJ, what about yourself?
I'm an Afak man, last year's winner. I just love his profile for a race like this. I'm not saying he's spectacularly well handicapped or anything like that, but you just know with this horse, Charlie Hills has had one day and one day only in mind, because he was second in the race to Settle for Bay in 2018. He won the race last year off 103. He's up to 106 now. He's only £3 higher, which is hard to believe given his 2 runs in the race for the last 2 years. And I would imagine everything has centred around this horse for this race, because he absolutely loves the big field. He loves the course. Kieran Fallon is booked. And to me, I just can't see how he doesn't finish in the first 5 or 6. And there's so many place terms on offer with the various bookmakers, especially Bet365. And I think, in fact, I just can't have him out of the first 5.
What price is he, Pat Cooney?
He's 12 to 1, and it makes sense to me. But I think the key, really, Dave, we're going to get such a massive clue in the opener at 1:15, the Silver Hunt Cup. We're going to have a view either way on what draw bias there is. Maybe there isn't going to be. And of course, Bell Rock, who's currently our 11-2 favourite for this Hunt Cup, he beat Uzo, who's favourite for the Silver Cup at 1:15. That could look a real good, strong form line come the time of this race. I just think it's impossible. I'm a little bit keen on Bell Rock. I get Lord Tennyson. How many horses have won a Hunt Cup after only 2 runs? That's one for the stats boys. No idea there. But this is a sort of race. I think you could lob in the likes of Raising Sands, Kinran. They're horses that always seem to run well in handicaps at Ascot, and they're quite decent prices. So I'm with DJ a little bit. You've got the each way first 5 angle. If you can crack the draw and you can crack the ground, you could get some good value for money at the bigger price ones.
There you go. Some pointers in an impossible-looking renewal of the Hunt Cup. Time for the 2-year-olds to join us then. Race 6 is the Windsor Castle. About 4:10. Bruce, have you got any pointers for me here? I looked at it here. I was speaking to Barry Orr on Betfair yesterday. He said Chief Little Hawk is one of Joseph O'Brien's naps of the week. It made all beautifully at Navan. I had a little look for it, thought, I like everything about it. It's drawn in 2. 7-2, too skinny for me.
Yeah, but, if you look at how the 2-year-old races are this year, with the big stables having to nominate, a very small number of horses, it almost becomes more of a clue when you look at how many 2-year-olds Aidan has. His 2 runners in this both ran in the same race. Chief Little Hawk won. Hyde Park Barracks was 3rd. You don't tend to worry too much about Aidan's 2-year-old debutants, because if you look back through, so many of his fantastic horses have actually started off with a number other than 1 in their form figures.
Yeah.
This is such a weird race, isn't it? Because every single horse, all 20 of them, have only had 1 run. There isn't a duck egg in sight. I mean, RPRs have got Mighty Gurkha as top rated, but it's probably the hardest race they've ever had to rate. That did win extremely impressively. It was the only one that really put a big gap between
It looked like a
itself and its
monster,
rival.
didn't
It did. So to that extent, you wouldn't put anyone off that one. But the very fact that Aidan's won with Chief Little Hawk last time, and it's his, supposed first choice, I'm going to go with Chief Little Hawk, rather like with Lord Tennyson. I don't particularly think I've got the value, But it's one of them ones where if you back something else and it wins, you kind of think, well, what was I doing?
They are really keen on it, I can tell you that. All about negating stall 2. Expect the pace on the far side here. DJ?
This is actually one of my strongest fancies of the entire week, and certainly my strongest fancy on Thursday. I'm absolutely all over tactical here. I don't think I've ever been as impressed with a horse who has been beaten first time out in a long, long time. Like, when I look back at that race at Newmarket, and we know the regard that Johnsons hold Eye of Heaven in, he's their great white hope for the future. And I genuinely think Tactical would have beaten him if that gap didn't close just over a furlong out. And it was one of these situations where Oisin Murphy said to himself, if this was a handicap, I would have went hell for leather through that gap. But this is a horse first time out, and I just wanted to give him a nice experience. And he just eased him back out of the gap and said, no, it's not about today, it's about the future. And I just loved what I saw from Tactical. He missed the break that day. He showed great speed to get himself into position just off the pace. And loved the way he travelled through the race. And even when that gap closed and he was eased up, without getting stuck into him, Oisin Murphy, I thought Tactical stayed on lovely up the hill. He was only beaten 2 lengths that day. He would have learned so much. I think he's a complete work in progress. And the minute that race was over, I said, I don't care what race he runs in Royal Ascot, he's going to carry my money. I think he's one of the best 2-year-olds I've seen so far this season. So it's Tactical all the way for me, Dave.
Do you know what, Dave? In the history of racing punditry, you will never hear such a worse, weak assessment of a race followed by such a strong one. DJ, I wish I had your confidence going into this race, my friend. Well done.
Yeah, well, look, it's another Royal Runner. Before we go to Pat, I've got Lockdown to thank for my selection because I watched a lot of Gulfstream. And you know where I'm going with this, right? Sunshine City. It was due to run on the turf, make its debut. I don't know if you watched a lot of Gulfstream in lockdown. You kept doing your selections thinking, right, it's going to be on the turf. The rain at Gulfstream was incredible on the dirt. It drifted out. The stablemate went clear. It dug deep. I love the way it hit the line. It got up. I think with Frankie on, this will be, don't matter what the rain does. Wesley Ward, one of the most bullish men you'll ever meet in your life. You know that. He just tells you everything's going to win. But I think he's got Big Sheriff in there as well under Oisin. I think this is the one, Sunshine City. That's the one for me. Pat, any love for Wes Ward's?
Well, I think you have to, don't I? I think Sheriff Bianco and Sunshine City, they're both 7-1. So you can back Wesley at 3-1 coupled, which I think would have been all over, wouldn't we, a few years ago? But he hasn't had such a great start, I think, in America this time around, but they come here with a high level. But I agree with Bruce, they've all got one run. There's hardly any collateral form. Tactical, as DJ says, a huge notebook horse. But, you look at him, he's 11-2, and Get It actually finished in front of him at Newmarket, and he's 14-1. So there could be anything goes in this race, really. I agree with Bruce, really. Chief Little Hawk, you tend to think of Aiden's as doing things wrong and improving dramatically from 1 to 2. Well, this fella looked very, very professional first time out. I think he appeals as a worthy favourite, but he isn't drawn in stall 2, and we're going to get plenty of clues here from the 2 Hunt Cups earlier. So 2 might be a very good draw. It might be a chronic draw. So hard race to call this one. I might be lobbing a few quid on a few big price ones, hoping they improve from their debut.
Pat Cooney taking a chance. It's a really good point, actually. We'll know about the draw by that point, won't we? And it can change at Ascot.
It really can. I mean, I think the fact is that the only real bias is that the jockeys think there is one. It's very rare that it's very rare that a horse that a group gets absolutely slaughtered by another group. And funny enough, if you look at the first race yesterday, they actually split into 3 groups.
Yeah.
And I think the front 2 came from the near side, the third was from the middle, but the ones on the far side weren't that disadvantaged. So, it can really make a monkey of you, this draw bias. It really, really can. Yeah,
it's usually where the pace in the market's going to be key for the Windsor Castle, the first race for the 2-year-olds on the week. Right then, bringing the curtain down on day 2, a new race, a mile 6 handicap. Collide was near the front of the market. He beat Land of Oz for Hugo Palmer on his return. Land of Oz did all right on that form. I like one in this. I'm going to take the top of the table if you don't mind. You backed it in the Cigaro Stakes while we were in the studio together. All right, Sunshine. I thought it was a fabulous run, really. I watched it back again. He had no chance being so far back, did he? Didn't give him a hard race. The only concern for me is getting so far back. I think if Danny Tudhope's alive to that, then we will be hitting the line strong. Are you going in again, or have you looked elsewhere?
I will put 1 chip on that particular number. You've got to, because it was a really good run, wasn't it?
It was.
And this potentially is an easier assignment, isn't it? So I will have a small bet on All Right Sunshine, but I do like one here, Fujiwara Prince. I just think this is a kind of classic Roger Varian horse that he'll bring on and bring on and bring on. Again, as with so many I've tipped today, the market will be alive to it. So I'm not particularly sure I'm going to get value. But, you know, he's already joint top on RPRs. He's fresh, lightly raced, and I just think Fujiwara Prince will go really, really well.
The trip was interesting with him, wasn't it? I must admit, I looked at it and thought, why are they running in this race? But you think he could have run in quite a few races this week, so it could be a very interesting angle there. DJ, have you got one for the finale?
Since the entries come out for this race, one of my many guilty pleasures that I need to get rid of, but it's Last Chance Saloon here for Almania. Switch from Michael Stout to David Simcock. He does everything wrong in a race, everything. And when you go through some of his form lines from last season, that even finishing 6th to Hamish at York when he traded really short and running and looked like winning, to me last season was all about this season because he just couldn't get his act together. Even when he ran at Ascot last year, I think it was in the King Edward, he was, could have been Hampton Court, he was just 3 lengths behind South Pacific. And again, it was like he was so laboured and it took ages for the engine to kick in. And all last season, it was a similar sort of story. Kind of lost a bit of ground and was coming from an uncompromising position. But every time he caught my eye, and I said, when he actually learns how to race properly, he's going to be a proper racehorse and possibly a stakes performer. He starts the season off 97. David Simcock's stable are obviously not in the best of form. He's coming from Sir Michael Stout, so you wouldn't necessarily think that David Simcock would improve one from Sir Michael Stout. But I just think the older he gets, the more educated he gets. The stuff he learned last year, he's been gelded. And that's the key thing. He looked like he badly needed a gelding operation. And off 97, I think he's going to be bang there. I think he's a good horse. I think he's a better horse than American 97. So being the forgiving type that I am, Dave, I'm going to give him one last, final chance at Almania.
You're more forgiving than I am. I jumped off that cliff. It sounds like Stouty's jumped off that cliff as well, but he does look like he might be in a stayer in the making. Pat Cooney?
Yeah, I just hope we're all in front by this stage of the afternoon because I wouldn't want this one to try and get out of trouble on. But I quite like All Right Sunshine as well, actually. I mean, he's got form on testing ground. It was an okay run first time out. Danny Tudhope round Ascot seems to be, good currency. So my eye is drawn to him at 11-1. There is a mover in the race, Floating Artist from Richard Hannon. You don't tend to associate Richard Hannon with having mile 6 handicappers, but there's been a few quid around for him. Ranch Hand, Fujiwara Prince, they've got their form book chances. As Bruce touched on with Fujiwara Prince, he's a 6-year-old. He's only run 6 times, so he must send out good signals on the gallops every morning to stay in training. But, we've all been very defensive. Roger Varian in handicaps, we see them coming, the public love them. I'm going to go with All Right Sunshine, not unreasonably priced at double figures for me.
As on the opening day, stamina required for finale on day 2. Time for the naps then, the best bet of all the selections you've heard on the panel. David Jennings, let's go to you. You can take it away.
Tactical, 410, Royal Ascot.
Pat Cooney.
All Right Sunshine in the lucky last.
Bodyline for me in that impossible looking handicap. The more I look at him, the more I'm going to double up, I think. Bruce?
Keep it simple.
Japan all the way. There are the naps. Well, we're wrapping up then day 2 here on What a Shout. Myself, Dave Orton, delighted to be back. Long day ahead of us, Bruce, but you're going to be back throughout the week.
As long as I tip some winners, I hopefully will.
It's going to happen today, I know it is. DJ, you had a good day yesterday, hoping to pressing up. Thanks for joining us again. You'll be here throughout the week.
Pleasure. Yeah, I'll be here.
Happy days. And Pat Cooney, good luck this afternoon, sir. Maybe not so good luck as the punters, but delighted to have you back again, Pat.
Yes, thoroughly enjoyed it once again. Thank you.
Super. If you'd have enjoyed it out there, don't forget to get in your questions for the panellists. You can send them in. They're going to be looking at them on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, however you do it. Hashtag What a Shout. Don't forget that members club option as well. 3 months for a tenner. Promo code racing is back. Unmissable stuff. Also download the free Racing Post app on the App Store as well. Remember, throughout the week, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Gamble responsibly. That's all from us here on What a Shout.